So today we are talking about fear. And more specifically, we're talking about movies and what people's idea of scary is exactly. Aside from the fact that it is now Halloween, I was thinking about this because of the release of The Nun 2. I can't help but to think about when I saw the first Nun at its release. It had been with my girlfriend at the time, and it was just something we wanted to do. We wanted like a small little fun date, and we had much higher expectations for this movie. And the best way I can describe our experience is that we were laughing throughout a majority of the movie. It kind of felt like they were doing a Marvel style comedy relief here and there. Don't get me wrong, there were some moments where it was rather tense. I guess the best word would be spooky. And then I like to compare this to something that happened more recently. I want to say it's almost been a year now since the release of Barbarian. When Barbarian released, I had been working at Home Depot still, and another close friend of mine were just having a conversation about scary movies we wanted to try to watch. She had suggested Barbarian. She said she had seen the ads, she wanted to go watch it. She had seen it before I did eventually and highly recommended it. But she wanted to make it very clear that she did not want to tell me anything about the movie because the trailer was apparently nothing like the experience that I was going to have, which couldn't be more accurate. I saw Barbarian, and yes, the movie is strange to say the least. It has a very strange premise. It has a couple strange characters, but aside from only a handful of jump scares, I still walked away from the movie saying that it was scary. Now, the reason that I think Barbarian was scary doesn't have to do with the jump scares. It just has to do with a handful of details, some of which including being deep underground in the dark, or a monster that you can't see but it is faster, stronger, and quite frankly, just terrifying. But as I began to have conversations with people about the movie who had seen it, they just prefer to take a short-sighted approach and call it stupid or goofy or strange. And while, yes, you could argue all of those things for this movie, it's not entirely true. Or I guess it is just short-sighted. Because what they're looking for and what they're expecting throughout the entirety of the movie is to be jump scared. So I think it's safe to say that a lot of people have a misconception about what a scary movie really is. But to really understand what it is that we're talking about today, we have to know or ask ourselves, what is fear? Fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain, or a threat. Fear is supposed to give you that feeling inside, or at least it's supposed to trigger whatever emotion causes you to grasp your seat, pull your blanket close, or hell, give you a nightmare. But just because something jump scares you, maybe, yes, you get a jolt, maybe it wakes you up a little bit, maybe your heart starts pounding, but that goes away. True fear, at least for a time, won't if you are scared. If something strikes any kind of emotion related to fear and tension, it'll stay with you. You'll remember it, and it'll be engraved in your brain. I could shorten this whole thing by just saying the fact that jump scares are overused. And it has created that misconception that jump scares equals a scary movie, which is not exactly the case. But really, let's think about all the things that scared you when you were a kid. Was it something hiding in the closet? Was it something waiting for you under your bed? Was it the fear of walking in the dark and something was lurking or watching you? In that situation, what's scaring you, or what did scare you, was the danger itself, aside from the idea that something was going to jump out you and go boo, because it wasn't. While jump scares can be effective and they can make an eerie scene pop, the constant use of them throughout the rest of the movie or series without jump scares can make what you're watching seem rather lackluster. That's, of course, if they're overused. Hello? Give me 1 second. Okay then. Well, I'm back. Are you scared? I'm honestly surprised you didn't click off right there. If you were scared, why is that? Did it give you some uneasy feeling? Was it because you didn't understand or weren't sure what would happen? Or are you just afraid of eye contact? That, my friend, sounds like a personal problem. Intimacy issues, question mark? I think you need to go get some help. Anyways, regardless what it may have been, if you were scared, there is still one fear that's deep down in most of us, if not all of us, and that's the fear of the unknown. The big question, what happens? That brings us to many writings and other forms of media, such as Mary Shelley's The Modern Prometheus, or also just the original version of Frankenstein's monster. Something like The Twilight Zone, or H.P. Lovecraft's work with Call of Cthulhu, or something as recent as Nope. All things that force you to make yourself afraid. How an idea or a concept could be even more frightening than just something jumping towards the viewer. Example, the movie Nope, believe it or not, is one of the few movies in recent years that actually scared me. Most notably, the part of Nope that scared me the most was the original scene, or kind of the introduction to the chimp murder scene. I'm not going to get into too much detail, obviously, about what goes on in the scene. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I know it's fake, and I know it's designed to scare you. There's no words to describe how tense that scene makes you feel. I would highly recommend that movie. Any fans of Jordan Peele's other work like Get Out and Us, please go watch Nope. It is so good. While it's probably something that I'll touch upon in a later video, my best friend and I actually walked out of that theater, making it very apparent that that was a movie we were going to be talking about for a long time. And I truly believe that when people bring up science fiction horror movies, that movie will be brought up as an American horror classic. But it strikes that fear in you. It strikes that thing in us when we don't know what's going to happen, and the scenario might be visceral enough just so that we think we're there almost. While it doesn't strike with my specific fears, I have a lot of different fears. The fear of the dark, claustrophobic. So a movie like As Above, So Below hits many different marks for me. Whilst my best friend is notoriously scared of cults. So a movie that would probably scare him, because I'm blanking on whether or not he's seen the movie, would be Hereditary. And if you've seen that movie, you know what I'm referring to. Hereditary would actually be a great example of a movie that doesn't emphasize on things like jump scares to scare you. It emphasizes on the situation and the dire tension that is built around the characters and the family, which builds to the end of most of the family's demise and the young boy being encountered by a cult. Aside from some of the supernatural aspects of that movie, it also hones in on some of the real life kind of terrors that can happen in the real world. Not saying that it's a huge probability, but cults are a thing somewhere out there. And that makes me think of another movie that, while kind of goofy, does touch upon a very real thing, and that's Scream. Yes, Scream is a very goofy movie. It's notorious for how campy it can be from time to time, but it could happen. True horror makes you think about all of those things. No matter how fictionalized the story may be or how drastic the situation might be portrayed, true horror and true terror will make you think about it for the rest of the day. Strike something in your head, in your psyche, that causes you to imagine a scenario, whether it's in your house or somewhere you're going, causing you to constantly look over your shoulder or flinch at the sound of your house creaking or something. But another big problem with movies that causes the audience to be pulled out of the experience is just that maybe somewhere along the lines they were never a part of the experience. What do I mean by that? I'd say a great way to describe this is something that video games already do, regardless if it's on purpose or not, and that's doing whatever they can to put the player in the experience of the story. A particular game developer that is probably the most known for this whole topic is Glenn Schofield, better known as the man responsible for Dead Space and the Callisto Protocol. His whole intention was some minute things, like integrating the hub hub of the game into the design of the character and their suit, like Isaac Clarke's health bar being on his back, for example, or something even more technical and broad throughout the game, like sound design. He makes it very clear that making noises sound scary, and in order to pull the player into the experience, you have to do whatever immerses the environment and makes it feel real.
Let's say you're doing a machine. Well, for a scary game, the machine should sound scary. And so we make sure that everything we kind of put in, even though it's relatable, it's gotta have a weird or an off-putting sound. And then we get the music in. And when I say music, it's not music as you know. I mean, it's scary. It's got weird instruments. Sometimes it gets a little abstract. And the whole idea here is to add that tension.
Quite literally pulls the player into the experience.
And then at that point, when we do a scare, what we call a stinger. Here's an example of a stinger from the Callisto Protocol.
That's what scares you. It's the control that the player has. Yes, maybe the entire thing is scripted, and yes, maybe the entire thing has a predetermined ending. But when you put the player in the experience and you have the capability to fail or to die, you face that consequence as the player, and you're the one facing those dangers. Whilst in a movie, also scripted and has a predetermined ending, it's up to the writers and the director to make a valid enough character to be handling those situations. And if the audience is not buying it, or if they don't feel like they're immersed into the design of the story and its narrative, then it's just not going to work and you're not going to scare anyone. Games are doing this perfectly. A more obvious example would be a haunted house. You go to a haunted house and you have people wearing masks, screaming at you. They've got props. They put you into claustrophobic spaces, also scripted and predetermined. And while you can't necessarily fail, your brain is already telling you that you're facing those dangers, and they make it real enough for you to feel that way. To touch upon the characters and the setting a little bit more, as stated, movies tend to be on very distant ends of a spectrum, where they do a horror story that is set in a semi-realistic setting, but tend to make something goofy with characters that are insufferable or delusional, or it just has a script that tries too hard to adapt to a modern era, like I stated before with The Nun and its Marvel-like narrative structure. Games, on the other hand, usually take the situation very seriously. Whether it's a semi-realistic setting or something very fictional like Dead Space in the future, the game establishes a world and character that will potentially find the means to survive and power through the dangers of the situation. I'm sorry, this has been bothering me the whole time. Who is that right behind you? Again, the goal of horror and what it means to strike fear isn't to expect the scare. In regards to stories being told that are taking themselves seriously, there are hundreds to thousands of people spending years of their lives to develop tales with the actual intention to make you piss yourself, or at least fuel your nightmares. But if you, as the viewer, are only going to count how many jump scares there are in the film and or game, I'm sorry to say that we're moving further into an era where you're more likely to be disappointed. Boys, if you're going to take Halloween to try to impress a girl with a scary movie, I would just recommend getting something fun like The Thing that is an actual horror movie, or if you want something more campy, go with Friday the 13th or Scream. Don't make the mistake I did with my high school girlfriend and watch something like I Spit on Your Grave. Don't ask, don't look it up, just trust me, pick something else. If you're like me and you hope to find something new to watch for this spooky season, I plan on watching Where Evil Lurks and see what that's all about. It's been around for about a month at the time of filming this. It is a Spanish-speaking film, I believe, so be ready for subtitles, unless you speak Spanish, of course. But it looks like the right blend of like a true horror and a good modern kind of jump scary kind of horror. So I guess we'll see. But it looks good. If you do happen to watch it, please let me know in the comments and tell me what you think about it. We'll definitely let you know what I think about it. Hell, maybe I'll do a video about it. We'll see. How many times did I just say about it? Whatever. Regardless of what you do, I hope you have a very spooky Halloween. Take this night as a prime excuse to eat all the junk food that you want. If you're a parent, don't hold back on that candy. This is their night. Let them have it. Hey, if you happen to enjoy your brief time here with me tonight, please feel free to leave a like, a comment, or maybe even subscribe if you want to see more videos and what I have in store. I am a new channel, so please bear with me while I get all of this new stuff put together and get a new mic and get more of these videos out more frequently. But just you being here helps me out a ton, and I appreciate that. With all of that being said, to all of my two-legged, four-legged, and even six-legged friends, yes, I know you're out there. I hope you have a wonderful Halloween, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.